Clay, with all that Supreme Court stuff coming down, it is fascinating to watch the arguments that are being made right now. I'm not even sure they're arguments. I think it's more accurate to call it wailing, shrieking, shouting, and throwing a tantrum from the left in a whole range of ways. The media, the Democrats in Congress. You have Elizabeth Warren in the Senate and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the House, both recommending the setup of emergency abortion clinics set up on federal land. There's so much here that I think is interesting. But one thing is, they are about to lose control, I think, quite obviously, of the House and the Senate. What do they think is really, I mean, that is their solution, to set up abortion clinics in national parks? People are saying, like, we're going to have abortion clinics in Yellowstone now. They think this is going to give them what they want?
I'm just picturing taking my family to the Smoky Mountains for summer vacation, and you pull into the Smoky Mountains, which I believe are the most visited national park in the country every year. Partly that's because they're so accessible to the East Coast, so many people can drive. And you get to Cades Cove, and you say, hey, kids, get ready. Oh, look, there's a bear. And then you drive a little bit further, and you're like, what's that? Oh, that's an abortion clinic? Or think about it, Buck, you go to Gettysburg, and you're like, hey, let's go watch, let's go look at Cemetery Ridge. Let's walk through Pickett's Charge. And then at the base of Pickett's Charge, you suddenly have an abortion clinic. I mean, this is next level crazy, Buck. Next level crazy. As
an aside, we're going to play the AOC calling for this in a second. This is just an aside because I saw this story this morning. Because I think unfortunately there's video of it. I don't know, people in Yellowstone. I've never been, and I actually want to go.
I'd love to go too, and I haven't been either.
Need to understand, bears and bison look cute from far away. I have seen grizzly bears in the wild. I've also seen them run.
When did you see a grizzly bear in the wild?
Oh, I went fly fishing in Alaska with my dad and my brothers. It was fantastic.
And you were just out there, and they were close?
I've got video of it. Yeah, we had grizzly bears walking around us. Clay, when we first got to the stream, there were bears that would just come and were eating the salmon. It's amazing. Alaska, in terms of natural beauty, is one of the most amazing places.
I've never been to Alaska either.
Oh, my gosh. Amazing. Yeah.
So did you see that Grizzly Man movie about the guy who went and lived with the grizzly bears and ended up getting killed by them?
And then they have the audio
Spoiler.
And they don't play it. Yes, I saw that. He was going to, that was going to end badly. The coolest thing about that guy's situation was that he had wild foxes became his pets. Like, they followed him around like a little miniature schnauzer or something. Anyway.
So how close? I'm still
not a Belgian Malinois, Clay, because those are badass dogs.
Yeah, I know. Everybody was mad at me for not knowing the Malinois.
But no, the aside here. I've got to get back to AOC in a second.
Could you reach and could you throw a football and hit a bear?
Could I have thrown the football and hit the bear? No, they were probably like 100 yards away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no. That's all. And we had Smith & Wesson 500s, a 50 cal handgun.
Yes.
Because
they could charge you.
And by the way, the guides we were with told us, they're like, if they charge, it's probably still going to get to you, even if you hit it with because they're and I bring it up because the bison, people think that bison are like, it's like a cow. It's 2,000 pounds of muscle with horns and can run 30 miles an hour. Someone just died in Yellowstone. I think maybe severely injured. I have to check on whether it was a fatality.
So they just opened Yellowstone back up, right? Because they had all the flooding. And somebody already got killed by a bison?
Someone got mauled by I don't know if maul is a proper term, gorged. Is that
gored.
What's it?
Gored.
Gored, thank you. Gorged is eating. Gored by a bison in the park. Anyway, side note, stay away from the bison, folks. Yellowstone, AOC, federal land. Here is what she said about it.
I'll start with the babiest of the babiest of the baby steps. Open abortion clinics on federal lands in red states right now.
Can I just say there's something really twisted about talking about opening abortion clinics on federal land and saying the babiest of baby steps. Weird.
She's
weird thing to say.
She's weird. And we need to play some of the cuts. I guess she did like a 25-minute interview on Stephen Colbert last night, who has just completely given up on the idea that he does comedy at all. and now he sits and talks to to AOC.
Isn't
for
it
a long
great
time.
that our friend Greg Gutfeld show just kicks his butt in
Just
the ratings every night,
destroys
just
him.
crushes
Just
them? It's
destroys
fantastic.
him. 'Cause it's one. Not only did he destroy Stephen Colbert, which effectively is on the corner from your place, right? The
Close
Colbert
by.
show
I
is
see
right
the
there.
Stephen Colbert line every day, and I want to walk past them and say, look, I know you're visiting New York. This is not worth your time.
Yes.
I want to tell them.
I love David Letterman. I know we disputed this before, but he was in that studio, and the Ed Sullivan Theater there in New York City. What's wild to me is not only did Stephen Colbert destroy the legacy, in my opinion, of The Late Show with David Letterman, of being funny and irreverent and zany and all those things, but everybody else followed him off the cliff because he had success. And now Greg Gutfeld on Fox News is beating all of them in late night, and they try to pretend his show doesn't exist in media because there's still a lot of people who cover late night as if it's a story, and they won't even discuss, by and large, Gutfeld's show, even though it dominates all of them. But, Buck, what this is really about is not even just on national parkland, because in many states, abortions are going to be even more available post-Roe decision than they were before. For instance, if you want to go New York, California, Illinois, they're going to expand abortion rights even farther than Roe did. So this is really about going to red state national parks where those people who live in those states are making their own decisions about what the abortion policy
this is
going
how,
to be.
there's a lot of federal land in Utah, for example.
Yeah,
they want there to be, they want abortion clinics. And remember, that means abortion clinics funded directly with federal dollars, too. They're now getting into the seriousness and the morality of this again for a moment. This is about making every state and every taxpayer complicit in this, even after Roe v. Wade was overruled as a non-constitutional right, which is obvious. They can keep this, this make-believe game going of, no, it's not a constitutional right anymore. If we had to sit and stomach for decades the lie that it is a constitutional right, they just have to stop being babies. Pardon the phrase. They have to stop being so sour grapes about this and pretending that this is not actually the way it's going to be going forward. What do you think happens when Republicans take back control of the Congress, by the way, with their federal abortion clinics? What do they think is going to be the reality there? And also, why do they hate democracy so much, Clay? Why can't they allow this to play out in the states?
Again, I think the wild thing about this, and that's why I use the Smoky Mountains as an example, Tennessee, my home state, is going to make whatever choice they want as it pertains to abortion based on the democratic process. The idea that you're going to build on federal lands, because you would have to build, right? You can't just start doing abortions in tents, I can't imagine. You would have to build a physical facility, and suddenly when you're driving through the Great Smoky Mountains, you're going to pass by an abortion clinic. I can't imagine it becoming a reality. It strikes me as really wild in terms of how it would be applied and the lack of logic that would also be entailed, and also would be messy. Just messy in terms of the way that people would respond to the federal government coming in and trying to Bigfoot state law.
I mean, we've gotten used to conservatives actually have lived with this regime of state laws can be very, very different. We have a right to bear arms, right? We all know this, and liberals try to undermine it, eradicate it, destroy it all the time. We live in a country where, Clay, I mean, if I'm found with a firearm in New York, I face multiple years in prison, right? Whereas if I lived in Texas, I could just go and buy a gun at the store and walk around. New York says I'm a bad person for having a gun. And, of course, until recently, they wouldn't even give you one to carry. Says I'm a bad person who deserves to be in prison. Texas says, no, actually, the Second Amendment really counts. Same thing in Florida, right? We can find these other states. This is the reality that we face day in and day out. The left has to have it their way, or they want to just overturn and overthrow the whole system. They have a meltdown. They can't understand this is actually the system we have. Roe was the wrong decision. Roe was the problem within the system, and that problem has now been purged.
Another easy analogy, and obviously these are very different things, Buck, is what happened with gambling laws. I know this because I spend a lot of time with sports gambling. Supreme Court says we can't have a system set in place when it comes to federal gambling legislation. So now every state can make their own decision. So if you live in my home state of Tennessee, you can gamble on sports. You're down in Georgia, you can't. Every state gets the right to make their choice. Gambling, lotteries, to your point, guns. There are lots of issues all over the country, even how much alcohol you can have in beer, how you can buy them, what the rules are going to be. They're different for every state.
There's, I think, a reality that is dawning upon the, I hate to use the term intelligentsia for the left because, are they actually intelligent? It's an open question on a lot of things. They're certainly not reality-based, but it's starting to come together where they see, Clay, that their electoral fortunes are going to be very dim. And keep in mind, everyone, it's not just this midterm. The midterm will effectively mean the end of the Biden presidency as a force for progressive change, right? Because not only are they going to lose any control. Now, remember, they still have the budget. They spent their $2 trillion for the American Rescue Plan, $1.9 trillion. And the president has his executive orders, but you got a Supreme Court majority that's pretty constitutional in its thinking for the most part. Certainly 5-4 constitutional in its approach. And you're going to have Republicans in control of the House, the Senate. How did we get to this point? We often talk to you about the nuts and bolts of day-to-day life in this country that are frustrating people, and understandably so. Like the price of gas, the price of food, the price of rent, the wide-open border. We just had that horrific tragedy, over 50 people killed in that one human smuggling incident because we have a porous border. So the cartels think they can run tractor trailers. Think about this. And I'm sure they're doing it successfully most days, by the way. So that's why they're doing these kinds of operations, because it is lucrative for them, because it usually works, and now led to an awful tragedy in that instance. The crime in cities across the country, I think Los Angeles just voted to downgrade some of the funding for the sheriff's office out there. So there's all this craziness in the policy, but also in the tone and the language and the overall approach. People are starting to realize there's something really wrong with these libs. I mean, here is, I know we're going to AOC, but I think she moves the media conversation in this country more than really any other Democrat. I mean, Joe Biden's president, okay, fine, but usually it's Joe Biden's mumbling. He doesn't know where he is, and everyone goes, well, that's Joe. AOC can say something, and then all of a sudden the media tries to back her up. We pull it apart because it's usually so flimsy and stupid, and then they say, why are you obsessed with her? Well, here she is talking about the Supreme Court decision. I just want you to hear it.
The Supreme Court has engaged in the overreaching of its authority in denying the human and civil rights of any pregnant person or person that could become pregnant in the United States of America. They have engaged in overreach, and it is the responsibility of the president and Congress to put the Supreme Court in check because they have delegitimized. I believe that President Biden should entertain expansion of the Supreme Court. I believe that he should forcefully come out in ending the filibuster of the United States Senate. I believe that he should call on Congress to repeal the Hyde Amendment.
Okay, can I just put aside, we can dive in, Clay, if you think it's worth it for everyone listening, the really childish legal and political analysis here of the system. And this is what the left does. They don't like the outcome. The system is illegitimate. They like the outcome. It's shut up, you're threatening our democracy. But she said pregnant people. We did have a moment there on Friday when Roe was overturned, when they're saying women's rights. And AOC, here she is going, guys, it really is pregnant people's rights. Folks are listening to this and they're saying the Democrats are actually insane. This is a real problem.
I hope that they run on a lot of what AOC would argue, because she represents the blue checkmark brigade on Twitter. The idea that you would say pregnant person, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, male, female, women get pregnant. That is an overwhelming 90+% win for sanity. Same way here on expanding the Supreme Court and ending the filibuster. Those are more detailed, nuanced perspectives because a lot of people don't know. I bet that most people in the United States don't even know how many Supreme Court justices there are. I would bet. So when you're talking about expanding the Supreme Court, people's opinions on that is not that refined because most people don't even know how many there are or that they have lifetime tenure or even how a Supreme Court justice gets put on the court. Most people are busy. They're not paying a lot of attention to that. But when you're using the phrase Buck pregnant person or Latin X, or you are arguing that America is a fundamentally awful and racist place, all of those things resonate in a big way. And they resonate in a big way with people across identity spectrums, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. And that's why I focus a lot on this show. And in fact, I'm working on a book right now, building on this idea that there's really become a division in America between sane and insane. And Republicans are mostly on the sane side. But Democrats have gone full on insane. And when you are arguing that men can get pregnant, I think it's a bonkers, banana land argument that everyone out there sees regardless of their identity.
And here's another one. You will not see a single Democrat. I know you have a story at the excellent website, Outkick.com, dealing with this. There's a story about a 29-year-old man competing in the border competition in New York City against, just to so everyone understands, usually the competition last year was won by a 16-year-old girl. A 10-year-old girl actually came, I think, in third place. So a lot of teenage girls in this competition.
Skateboarding competition.
Skateboarding competition. Okay, it's skateboarding competition. There's prize money. A 29-year-old man is competing against these teenage girls, and the media wants to tell. I mean, you can see the photos. The individual's grown out
Naval
hair.
veteran with 3 kids, I believe.
Yeah, it's grown out his hair a little bit, and other than that, is a biological male, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a 29-year-old guy competing against competing against in the women's division against teenage girls, and the media wants you to believe, the Democrat media, AOC, if she was ever asked about this, which she won't be because the media knows this is not a good place for them to actually, but if she were asked about it, she'd say this is great, this is progress. 29-year-old guys beating 13-year-old girls in athletic competition is progress. This is America. This is what it means. To your point, Clay, 90% of America looks at them and goes, you guys need to stop being crazy.
I wonder on some level whether, we have Pride Month. What if men decided they wanted to identify as Women Month and basically went and won every women's competition that was going on that was open? Because how do you it's so absurd. Just follow my logic here. I don't know how you're pointing out this 29-year-old skateboarder, which we wrote about at Outkick. What standard do you have to meet in order to be able to identify as a woman? In other words, if there was ladies' night at the bar down the street here where I'm living, and ladies got in for free and got dollar beers, I've got a beard, but if I wanted to be a lady, could I identify as a woman to take advantage of ladies' night and the lower price on beer? In other words, I don't know that there's any standard even to be applied to identify me as a man or woman when it's just my gender identity in my head. So for so many of these competitions, if a man walks up and says, hey, today I'm identifying as a woman, could I go become a WNBA superstar tomorrow? I haven't played basketball in a long time. I think I could make a WNBA team right now. I think at 6 foot, 185, 43 years old, I think I would be good enough to play women's professional basketball. I really do. If I just decide I want to identify as a woman, can I become a WNBA player? Can I become a pro women's athlete? It sounds ridiculous, but that's where the Democrat logic has taken us. And if I followed their logic, I think I could apply and say, yes, I'm a WNBA star.
I think that's true. And by the way, they would tell you that you would
It'd be very brave of me.
It's stunning and brave, in fact.
Stunning and
actually.
brave.
It would be stunning and brave.
AOC was on with Stephen Colbert last night. Stephen Colbert initially was involved in humor. And his humor, that's funny
he was
in and of itself.
tangentially in the proximity of humor, yes.
Every now and then do you see something that goes viral on Twitter, Buck, and you just look at the number of people who liked it or shared it, and you think to yourself, what is going on? Stephen Colbert tweeted yesterday, if the Supreme Court is going to allow prayer in the middle of a high school football field, they should allow high school football games in the middle of a church. This is such a bad and unfunny joke and not even remotely interesting of a comment. And I looked, and it got 30,000 likes. And actually, Annie, the top result I see is this joke is worse than January 6th, which is actually way funnier than Stephen Colbert's attempted joke. But it's emblematic, Buck, of this sort of weird and not even remotely intelligent cottage industry that has emerged. Stephen Colbert was not good as a late-night TV show host, so he just basically started a propaganda show that was anti-Trump, and then it was successful, but it's not a comedy show anymore. And I'm going to talk about AOC in a moment, but we were talking about this tweet off air, and you were like, if one of us said that on air, it would make us want to cringe.
Yeah, I'd come back later and apologize to the audience for assaulting their ears with something so dumb. Yeah.
Do you think I certainly don't lack for confidence. I'm confident that I could do a better late night talk show than Stephen Colbert.
Well, keep in mind, he's
never done
not
late
even
night talk show. Never even been a guest on a late night talk show.
He's not even writing his own joke. Right?
He's got a huge cottage industry of people writing his show for him. And it's still awful every night.
I mean, what we do with radio is we sit down and we talk for 3 hours a day with whatever comes to mind and whatever we think is important after reading for hours before we come on the show. A lot of people who are in the news entertainment space, which I think what you'd have to call now the Colbert Show, right? It's not.
Yes.
It's not really a comedy show. It's kind of it's essentially the next iteration of the Daily Show, which, while clever, I always recognized it for what it was when Jon Stewart was the host there. I mean, no one even cares. Trevor Noah is propped up by the liberal system. No one actually thinks he's particularly talented, funny, or good at what he does. They gave him this show. No one had ever heard of the guy before they gave him the show. But it doesn't have any resonance. You never even see people talking about Daily Show clips anymore. What Jon Stewart did was create a world where the libs their worldview is always validated, and the other side gets made fun of. And if anyone pushed back on it, it's just jokes, man. It's just jokes. I'm just a comedian. Some have described it as clown nose on, clown nose off, right? You know, it's sword and shield. Oh, I'm not really serious. Actually, I want to sit down and talk to the Secretary of Defense now. That's the whole game, right? And they've been able to get away with this for a long time in different places. But the late night comedy shows aren't really comedy shows anymore. Yeah. And it's really in keeping with the fact that they can't actually make jokes, Clay. We know this. The only people they can make jokes about are Republicans and cisgender, hetero, white males. Anyone else that they make jokes about. I mean, look what just happened to Dave Weigel over at the Washington Post. He didn't even make the joke.
Suspension.
He liked the joke.
Unpaid suspension.
You're not even allowed to make a joke about, about women.
I want to reemphasize that. I think this is a good joke, all right? And again, I'm paraphrasing. All he did, this is how crazy the left has become. All he did was retweet. All he did was retweet this joke. Every girl is bi. You just have to figure out whether it's bi-curious or bisexual. I've already messed up the joke. Bisexual or bipolar, right? The joke is on the word bi. And it's actually kind of funny, right? Like, I'm sort of messed up that joke there. But a lot of you would smile or you might snicker. He got suspended for a month from his job for retweeting somebody else's joke. I can't believe that we have reached this world. And to your point, Buck, that's emblematic of what's going on in late night television. They can't even make jokes because somebody's going to be offended. So they basically run propaganda networks now, which are designed to ridicule Republicans.
What is out there, right? I mean, you look at the day-to-day, there is so much to make fun of with the Biden administration.
Yes.
Joe Biden himself, Kamala Harris. If you were really a comedian looking to
Kamala is a
mock
gold
things,
mine.
Kamala Harris provides, I mean, just her sound bites. You don't have to go back into her, policy statements or whatever. Just the things that she
or
says
the
on a daily
fact that she
basis.
was a side chick for much of her political career. I mean, you don't even have to go into that, although it is funny. But how about Biden falling off of his bike? Can you imagine if Trump had fallen like Biden fell off the bike?
But the problem is their audience has been trained. The Democrat mindset in the coasts particularly, so, New England, New York, New Jersey, California, and the Pacific Northwest, the coastal blue staters have really been trained to think that jokes are mean. You can't laugh at a joke that involves anybody unless you despise them. And so that means, which is not true, but that's their mentality, or, you're punching down or you're undermining them as human beings or whatever. And so as a result of that new framework, as I said, the only people they can make fun of, you see this all the time, constantly making fun of right-wing Republicans. Right-wing Republicans aren't very funny. I mean, I hate to break it to them. There's not that much that's that funny about conservatives, which is why their shows stink.
And so AOC went on for like a 25-minute infomercial last night with Stephen Colbert. And she was praising Cassidy. I don't think AOC is smart enough to even understand what hearsay is.
I don't want to derail from the AOC thing, but can I just put it out an idea, and then I promise we'll get this AOC clip. AOC's political career, if she had to do a Lincoln Douglas-style debate, right, which is what I did in high school, I don't know what they call it other places, if she did LD-style debate with either one of us for an hour, or any number of our conservative brothers and sisters in the movement, in media for an hour, her political career, I think, would be over. They never actually, this is one of the problems we have.
True.
In the new media environment, these people who are the paragons of ideology for their side can get away with being total ignoramuses and morons without having, say what you will about some of the, James Carville at least would mix it up with people. You know what I mean? I know he's not a politician.
I disagree with Bernie. I'll give you an example. Bernie Sanders, I disagree with much of what he says. Bernie Sanders is able to defend what he believes in, whether you agree or disagree with him, right? He is smart enough to understand, I think, on some level, the larger permutations of his policies. He would debate with you or me, I think, and be proven wrong.
Yeah, he's basically a communist who complains about rich people and always says everyone's going to get free health care. End of story. But he will say that.
Yes, and I think he at least understands it on some level. I really question whether AOC is able to unpack the vast majority of what she said.
So I derailed. AOC reacted to Hutchinson, Clay. Call for this one.
AOC loved Cassidy Hutchinson. Last night, she went on Stephen Colbert and said this.
It was just stunning to understand and see the detail and the depth through which there was also just a conscientiousness of guilt. They knew that what they were doing was wrong. When at the very end of this hearing, you hear that Mark Meadows, the chief of staff to the president himself, asked for a pardon because he knew that he was breaking the law in order to seize power and undermine democracy in the United States of America. It is stunning. It is absolutely stunning. And that the president himself was willing to choke his own Secret Service in order to do so.
It's not true, right? The Secret Service are testifying that's not true. But I just want to mention, she says absolutely stunning that anyone would seek a pardon. I think Republicans need to push back more aggressively on this. It does not stun me at all that if you were a Republican who was fighting against the election of Joe Biden and making aggressive legal arguments as a part of that fight, would it surprise you at all, Buck, if you were charged with a crime based on the way we've seen Democrats use the Department of Justice as a weapon of their political party? So I don't buy into the concept here, which is being spread and I think not fought back against very aggressively, that the only reason you would ask for a pardon is because you think you did something wrong. No. I think most of these guys and girls who, if they did, and I'm not saying they did, but if they did, it wouldn't be because they believe they did something wrong. I don't think they believe that at all. It would be because they think they're going to get a show trial like Donald Trump is and might get prosecuted for political show even though they did nothing wrong. That makes complete sense to me that you would say, hey, could I get a pardon for this?
Yeah, the Mueller probe destroyed any faith that a rational person should have in the Department of Justice and the FBI's ability to be nonpartisan when the most sensitive political issues are at stake. So, of course, people would be concerned about that, would be thinking about that going forward. And, I think as well, you have to look, what exactly do they think they're going to get out of all of this, right? Are they going to prosecute Donald Trump? I keep wondering about this. What is the charge going to be? What would the charge have even been for Mark Meadows or Rudy Giuliani? What? Lying about an election result? I got news for libs. They got a lot of people running around who have a long history of lying about elections, lying about Russia collusion. This is the criminalization of politics. Unless Donald Trump himself was down on the Capitol grounds in the building with the big furry hat on and the spear, they need to shut their mouths about prosecuting the former president. It's ridiculous.
I agree with all of that. I would also add another reason why you might want the pardon is you might have to spend millions of dollars of your own money, even if you did nothing wrong, defending yourself.
Yeah, the process is the punishment.
That's exactly right. And so I think Republicans need to do a better job fighting back against asking for a pardon means you did something wrong. No. It probably means that you foresee that Democrats are going to use the Department of Justice in a political manner.
That's why we're here, Clay, to crack our knuckles and throw some haymakers.
I just think that Republicans are doing a poor job of responding to that attack, and I think it's not a difficult attack to respond to. And I also think AOC is an imbecile, and the Stephen Colbert show sucks, by the way.